Paul, your favorite developer just announced the sequel to your favorite game. Yippee! Trailers upon trailers, you can't wait to play it. Oh, all the characters from the previous game in a brand new engine. Look, you haven't seen this guy in years. Probably cost $100, but whatever. You're getting it the moment it releases, right? Right? Do you ever wonder why some games just take ages to launch? Like, I gotta wait until my 30s to play this game, and I've been waiting for what, 10 years? Well, it's not as simple as the developers are being lazy or anything like that. Okay, some of them are straight up scams. But there are good reasons why your games not only take a lot of time, but a lot of money to make as well. And that's what we're here to discuss today. Games get announced, but only release multiple years later. And when release is approaching, we get delays, and then suddenly a few more years have passed. For example, Deltarune took 6 years to make Chapter 1, and then 3 years for Chapter 2. And the story supposedly goes all the way until Chapter 7. Hollow Knight Silksong was announced in 2019, and there's still no news of its release. Then, Darkest Dungeon 2 took 7 years to develop. Now, these games were developed by small development teams, or even just one dude, where every aspect of game development has to be handled by one guy, which includes programming, designing, writing, composing, art, optimization, localization, and many more tasks that are too big to list. So it would make sense that small developers take a long time. But as we've seen time and time again, long development times also apply to large companies as well. One of the biggest examples right now would be the infamous GTA 6. It plans to release in 2025 after being in development for 12 years since GTA 5. Like, we got everything before GTA 6. Another example would be Unicorn Overlord. We did an exclusive interview with Akiyasu Yamamoto, and you can check it out on our website by clicking on the top right corner. He mentions how the game initially planned to release on the PS4 and PS Vita, but development took 8 years, and it ended up launching on a newer generation of console than originally planned. Large companies like Rockstar have thousands of employees, yet they can still take as long as smaller companies to develop their games. So what could be the reason? Before we get into that though, we're planning to make more discussion videos like these in the future, so subscribe to keep up with the discussions. For one, the scope of games have completely blown up in the past years, from technological innovations and rising expectations from fans. You know, stuff like photorealism, giant maps, animated cutscenes, and 16 times the detail. An example would be Red Dead Redemption 2, which took 8 years to develop by Rockstar. NPCs have certain places to be at certain times. They react to the player as they would in real life. There's also absurd animations for even the simplest things like, eating. And heck, players even discovered an entire ecosystem of animals that the majority of players would never even see. I mean, seriously, search up Red Dead Redemption 2 animals and watch some of them. So, are these features necessary? I don't know, but it's cool. Though we can't deny that this complexity will absolutely eat up development time. But there are still some games, while not complex, still take years to release due to the extensive labor work needed. An example would be the Trails series, which takes ages to localize due to the massive amount of text and dialogue from the story, characters, and NPCs. Like, I'm talking about a city with hundreds of characters, each with 2 to 3 versions of dialogue, and all of them would get new dialogue every single time the story advances. According to Trails in the database, which compiles all text in every game, the latest game that was released in English has over 72,000 dialogue boxes. Not words, dialogue boxes, each of which contains multiple sentences. It took 3 years of dodging spoilers from the Japanese release until the English version came out this year. And keep in mind, the game itself, from the English and Japanese versions, are basically the same, which means the delay was purely for the localization. This shows that despite not having the most cutting-edge graphics or animations, or systems or maps, repetitive and laborious work is just another factor that further delays the release of a game. For us players, it just means more waiting. But video games, as much as we hate to admit, are still products to make money. It only makes decent money once players actually start buying the game. But, I mean, the game's not out yet, so how are they gonna buy it? Because of this, development costs are a huge concern, as they basically won't be paid off until they're done with the game. With higher costs, there's a good chance that the price of the game will also increase, which might explain why AAA games are often so expensive, because if the game doesn't sell well, it will be a massive risk and liability where the company could lose millions of dollars. Perhaps this is the reason why we've been seeing so many remakes or remasters recently. The main focus of these are often improving graphics and adding modern quality of life features. Some games are also remade on modern hardware, since the original way to play it is basically going extinct. And while remaking an entire game's graphics and assets isn't easy, a ton of time will still be saved, as the core of the game, such as characters, design, and story, are already set in stone from the original, and perhaps they might tweak it here and there a bit. Overall, this might be a much safer way of making money, but some players are getting tired of copy and paste remakes, which is a whole nother topic. Perhaps that's why indie games have been on the rise as well. Their budgets are often smaller compared to larger companies, which reduces the burden of low sales. This could allow indie developers to have a bit more freedom when experimenting, which may lead to more interesting games that aren't just an RTX on of an older game. Besides the largening scope and increasing expectations, there may be a lot more going on behind the scenes, which is not often talked about in public. A lot of us take multi-platform gaming for granted, like, oh, just boot it up on that PC or transfer that save file over. Well, a lot goes into making this possible, where developers have to juggle development on different platforms. For example, if two people buy a PS5, they're both practically identical. This can be great for developers, since they need to care less about ranging hardware specifications or different operating systems, but it could mean the ceiling of what's possible in games may be much lower, as they have to navigate around the hardware limitations. As for PCs, the possibilities are endless with how open PC development can be, but this could end up as a double-edged sword. There will be even more variables to consider, from different CPUs, GPUs, consumer hardware, and many more. That's why some games just perform better on AMD or NVIDIA or Intel systems. These range of variables may force developers to consider a larger range of hardware to make sure the game runs on as much hardware as possible, which takes additional time. Games used to be released on 1 or 2 platforms at the start. Then, versions for other platforms would be developed in between and released sometime later. One example would be GTA 5, that was released on the PS3 and Xbox 360 in 2013. 1 year later, they developed the PS4 and Xbox One version in 2014. Then 1 year later, the PC version released in 2015. Since then, the PS5 and Xbox Series X and S have come out, where they have released a version on those platforms as well in 2022. Like, that's almost a 10-year difference in release. Now, it seems that the majority of games are trending towards multi-platform releases on day 1. So cramming all of these into the development cycle naturally takes more time and money. But I guess that's the price we have to pay for the convenience of multi-platform gaming. Besides these reasons, developers may use off-the-shelf development software like Unreal Engine or Unity, but there's a good chance it's been absolutely tinkered to hell to suit their needs. Because of that, their pipeline may not be compatible between different platforms, and they have to make their tools that makes the game from scratch. Here's a question for you. Have you paid attention to the credits at the end of a game? There are hundreds of people involved in making the game, or less if they're indie. How many of these people have actually stayed through the entirety of the project? There may be a few who've come and gone between development time. I mean, anything can happen in just a few years. Unexpected changes to the backbone of the project, which is its people, can make or break its release as well. Like, imagine if the producer straight up left. It's like abandoning their baby, except their baby is eating millions of dollars. Okay, I guess that's not too different. To summarize things, game development, very hard. Fans want good game, company make good game. Game complex, must hire people. More people, more cost. Big scope, long development. More platforms, more development. People leave, no direction. No release, no money. No game, no life. So stupid. But of course, there are still thousands of other games to play while waiting in the meantime. So are you waiting for any games this year? Or next year? Or next year? Or next year? Let us know in the comments and be sure to subscribe for our future videos.